I was a 24-year-old man, and a few years ago I got a job at a local grocery store. I was attending community college and just wanted to make some money to help pay for food and have fun with friends. After a few months of working there, I started to get familiar with the regular customers who came in often. Most of them were nice or generally normal people, but there was one man who always felt strange. The man would always come in almost every night around 9 o'clock, an hour before the store closed. He would walk around the store for a long time before finally buying 1 or 2 items and paying. I thought it was odd how long he would spend just walking around, almost every night only buying a few items. He never talked much, but I assumed he was homeless or living out of his car, which might explain why he only bought a few items. This went on for several weeks, if not months. I didn't really think about it too much after a while because it just became a normal part of the job. However, one night he came in as usual, but instead of walking around, he went straight to the register where I was working. I asked him if he needed help with anything, and the man just stared at me for a moment before asking me if I drove the old Toyota that was parked in the parking lot. I felt a bit odd that he knew that, but I answered yes, because I didn't know where this conversation was going to go. I thought maybe there was something wrong with my car, but the man just remained serious and walked away from the register. Of course, this was really strange, so I asked a coworker to watch the register for a moment. Then I went to the front of the store and looked out into the parking lot. My car was exactly where I had parked it, and there didn't seem to be anything wrong with it. I went back inside to the register, thinking I would ask the man directly when he came to pay. But he never came. I don't know when he left, but the store closed without him ever coming to the register like usual. That night when I got home, I checked around my car, and there was nothing that seemed strange. It made me confused. The next day, I planned to ask the man again, but he didn't come in for the entire next month. The man never showed up again. I was just left wondering why he had asked about my car so suddenly and for no reason. Then one Saturday night, after I finished work as usual, which was the only night of the week where I was the only cashier, I left the store alone. However, as I walked across the parking lot towards my car, I felt a strange feeling in my stomach. Maybe I was just remembering it wrong, or maybe there was an intuition about something. But I felt like something was wrong. I walked quickly and got into my car, throwing a glance around the parking lot. The place was almost empty, and there was nothing that gave me reason to believe that anything was wrong. I started the car, and just before I put it in gear, I heard a soft noise from right behind me. Then from the corner of my eye, I saw something move in the mirror that faced the back seat of my car. I left the car running as I ran out and stood a few steps away from my car, looking into the back seat window and seeing a shadowy figure moving inside it. I turned and ran back to the store, went inside and called the police. When they arrived, my car was empty, no signs of forced entry, which meant they would have had to have an illegal copy of the key, or I might have accidentally forgotten to lock the door. I'm pretty sure it was the strange man from a few weeks ago, but I don't know why. If it was him, he might have been trying to get in for the entire month that I didn't see him, and waiting for me to forget to lock the door. I thought I had locked it that night, but sometimes I might forget without realizing it. In any case, the man who was behind the car was clearly not just trying to rob the car, but even trying to stay hidden after I got in and started the engine. It's so scary to know that I almost left the parking lot and drove away without realizing I was carrying him inside, and who knows what would have happened after we left. I have been a police officer for my county for almost a decade. I have seen some crazy and disturbing things, sometimes making me question why I chose this career path. However, what happened on that night still sticks in my mind and often becomes the event I think about the most. It was nearing the end of winter, but in my location it stays cold until mid-spring. On that night I was assigned to patrol the main highway for most of my shift. On a typical night I might stop 2 or 3 speeding cars and otherwise not do much else. Occasionally a call for help would come in, but usually patrolling is the most boring and pointless part of the job. I was driving along the highway doing my usual rounds until about 2 a.m. when I passed a car on the side of the road that hadn't been there earlier. The lights were off, and the car was far off the shoulder of the road, so I didn't see it until I had passed. I exited the next exit and made a full circle, taking 15 minutes before I returned to the location I had seen earlier. I assumed it was just an abandoned or broken down car that I might not have noticed before, so I wasn't in a hurry. I parked my patrol car about 15 feet from the car and left the spotlight on. I called in to report that I was investigating a possible empty vehicle on South Highway. Then I got out with my flashlight and walked towards the car. When I first saw the car, I was surprised at how old and beat up it was. It looked like something from the 90s and was completely rusty, as well as scratched and dented. I approached the driver's side window and raised my flashlight. There was nothing inside, but as I moved the flashlight around, I accidentally saw some very concerning signs. There was a pile of clothes in the back seat that looked like they belonged to a young woman, but the way they were scattered didn't look right. I moved to the other side of the car, but a faint noise from behind me caught my attention. I immediately turned around and pointed my flashlight into the woods surrounding the highway, and the noise immediately stopped. But I heard enough to know that it was footsteps. Someone was walking there, maybe even watching me. I yelled for them to come out into the light with their hands up. A few moments passed, then I yelled again, but it was still silent. I felt my heart pounding in my chest as I reported the situation and asked for backup to come. I stood there staring into the woods, with the fear that my life was on the line. If something had happened here, there would be a reason for whoever was there to try to stop me from knowing. I raised my firearm and moved further behind the car, but kept my eyes on the tree line without exposing my entire body. The next 5 minutes were nerve-wracking, but finally another officer arrived on the scene and I immediately heard footsteps running further into the woods. We immediately searched around the car, and it was clear that something was wrong. However, searching the woods in the middle of the night when someone might be dangerous was not safe. Along with the signs of violence, we found an empty ammunition wrapper, so it is likely that the person was armed. Knowing that there was someone watching me the whole time, maybe even with a gun pointed at me, is one of the scariest feelings to even think about. The next day we were able to gather more information and do a deeper investigation, but the car could not be traced, and even though footprints were found in the woods, they quickly faded without a clear direction. What really happened on that night is still an open case with no leads on the perpetrator or victim, which now makes it hard for me to stop thinking about it. I have a cleaning business that specializes in cleaning office buildings for medium to large companies. Due to the nature of our work, we start our shifts at 6 p.m. on weekdays because most offices don't want us inside during their employees' working hours. On this day, I arrived at the scheduled office building at 6:30 p.m., entered the keypad code, put on my equipment, and locked the door behind me. The building was only 2 stories tall, smaller than most, but both floors were very long and there was a smaller basement. I started on the 2nd floor to work my way down. I went around the room, taking out all the trash and cleaning up anything on the floor that was in my way. Then I tied up the trash bags and took them to the dumpster behind the building to dispose of them. However, when I was outside, I saw 2 cars parked, both with their engines off. The strange thing was that this was the only building around, and there shouldn't be anyone here at this time. I didn't know why they would be parked behind the building or where they could be if they weren't in the car. I went back inside and made sure all the doors were locked, then continued with my work. However, I occasionally checked the windows to see if there were any changes with the cars outside, but everything remained the same. I finished the top floor and went down to the first floor, doing the same process. But this time, when I went outside to throw away the trash in the dumpster, I saw one light come on in one of the cars almost immediately after I went out, although it turned off again soon after. This made me feel uneasy, so I quickly threw away all the trash and went back inside. Knowing that someone was in the car made the situation even stranger. I tried to work faster and finished the first floor at 11 p.m., which was much faster than before. Now there was only the small basement left and I would be done. I moved all the supplies down and started working. However, as I was there, I heard a crashing sound echoing throughout the building. It came from one of the floors above me, so I couldn't tell exactly what it was or where on the floors it was heard. I put down my things and started to go upstairs, but stopped halfway when I heard the sound of voices talking in the upstairs hallway. 2 men were talking to each other in normal voices, as if they weren't afraid of meeting me there. I backed back down the stairs and hid behind some boxes. I called 911 without telling them what was going on, but before I could say anything, footsteps started coming down to the basement. I only saw the shadow of a man on the wall before fully hiding behind the rack of boxes. I heard the sound of his footsteps walking around a little. Then he shouted up to the other man, "No, I didn't see anyone. I think we're safe." He went upstairs, and I saw his shadow again, but I could see that he was holding something small in his hand, which made me even more scared. I reconnected with 911 and explained what I could, then waited a few minutes. During this time, I thought the men were mostly on the top floor, but then they moved to the first floor, and suddenly one of them shouted, "Their van is still here!" Both of their footsteps started running around but didn't leave the building. They were looking for me. It was hard to control and stifle my breath as I heard them running all over the building and moving things around above me. Then heavy footsteps quickly came down the stairs to the basement. One of them started throwing boxes around and searching around, but the faint sound of approaching sirens caught the attention of the other man who told the one on the basement. Both men ran away. I stayed hidden until an officer came to pick me up. It only took 2 hours for the 2 suspects to be caught. They refused to share the reason they broke in, but some stolen goods were found in their car. It can be said that they weren't the brightest people, because they seemed to be just guessing if I was gone, instead of just starting by looking for my car to see if I was there. However, they didn't leave after finding out that I was inside, which was probably the scariest thing I've ever experienced. Fortunately, I didn't need to know what would happen if they found me.